Bueno, Brazilian author and YouTuber who writes about Brazil's history and was the translator of Jack Kerouac's On the Road.
The idea is to talk about a bit how did you go, because, let me backtrack. How did I find out that you were doing this Não Vai Cair no ENEM? Because I was doing some research about the Grupo dos 11, that was Brizola's way of, mobilizing the people around, his policy ideas. And then, of course, at one point you came up, you surfaced on my search. And then I said, okay, let me watch this. It's so cool. You make it come alive, right? Like, I'm great. The special effects and, the editing.
The vibration.
The vibration, your energy. And of course, your Portuguese, right? Which is that lovely Gaúcho accent, the Southern accent, right? Which I love, which I missed. I didn't realize. So I watched several of your programs already, of your episodes. You make it very accessible, very interesting. And then at the end, you have this disclaimer saying, well, if you want to know more, now you have to read the books, right? So it is. So tell me about how did it come from the books? You had published already several books in the history of Brazil. At one point, you decided to jump into doing videos or using this medium. How did that came about? When was the moment you thought about it? Someone approached it? Because I know Flock TV actually owns the program, right? And
yes. When my books came out about history of Brazil, it was a big surprise. First, because nobody really knew that I could be a writer, since I was such a talkative guy. I was a big fan of Bob Dylan. I was a Bob Dylan fanatic. Then I started to study everything about his life. And then I got into the Beat generation. And then I got deep into the Beat generation stuff. And they never had been translated to Brazil. So I translated On the Road for the first time in Portuguese. It was a huge success. And I became kind of famous because I did the same travel. I hitchhiked from New York to my hometown in Porto Alegre in Brazil. And then I got to Brazil finally. And then I decided I would have to translate the book. I translated the book. I went to 10 publishing houses. The 10 of them said, no, they turned me off. No, this book is already passed. And then one guy said, okay, let's gonna give it a chance. And it, boom. It sold like 200,000 copies in months. I also translated and edited Allen Ginsberg, William Burgess, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and I brought to Brazil Charlie Bukowski, and John Font, several of them. And then other guys became rich and I became famous. I would trade my position. The publishing houses became richer and I became poor. Almost like that. And then one day I was walking down the street and I said, what do I know about my own country? And then I started reading about history of Brazil, but nobody knew that. And then when Brazil is going to turn 500 years of its discovery in the year 2000, I went to a publishing house. Everybody knows me in all the publishing houses. And then I said, I have this book about the discovery of Brazil. And they looked at me and said, come on, this is not US of A. You know about Bob Dylan, you know about Beat Generation. What do you know about Brazil? And I said, I know everything. And this is funny because people doesn't even realize or notice or think that I could be a writer because they thought I was just a talking machine, right? And then they discovered that I was a writer because I translated the book and I did the introductions. And they say, oh, this guy writes all right. And then they realized I could be a writer. But they didn't realize that I could write about Brazil, right? And then I give them the book, and the book, boom, the book sold like 500,000 copies. This first one, 420,000 copies. It was, Larry Rotter, which was the New York Times correspondent in Brazil. They gave me a whole page in the New York Times. And since a guy that got a whole page in the New York Times is a world famous guy.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty good,
Yeah,
pretty good. For the United States, the cultural.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
You're part of the glitterati now.
Yes, literati, yeah.
Yes,
I'm very grateful to. Yeah. And I'm very grateful to him and blah, blah, blah and stuff. And then I wrote, it was a set of books, 4 books. And they all together, they sold 1,200,000 copies, right? And then I was following my career as a writer. But I still keep talking and talking. And then some guys from the Caceta e Planeta, which is a humoristic group in Brazil, which is connected to TV, they have to leave Globo TV, Global Network, which is the biggest TV in Brazil. They try their chances in the internet, right? And they didn't win.
This was what, 2017, around 2017?
2017, we met in a TV show, and they said, you must talk about history of Brazil in the internet. And I said, come on, man, I don't want it. And they said, why you don't want it? Because they have comments and they have people and they have likes and dislikes. I don't want to deal with that. I'm a writer. I'm a serious writer. And then they looked at me and said, are you serious? And I said, yes, I'm a serious writer. I'm intellectual. And they said, come on, you're gonna blow on the internet. I said, it might be possible, but I don't want to follow this way. And they said, and if we pay you for doing that. They said, now it changed. So they hired me, right? So everybody says, your channel is not my channel, unfortunately, in a way. They said, okay, we hired you and you go into the studio and you tell this history of Brazil the way you do to us. Because I do it, I already did it, but on the streets, on my home, on parties. And then I started to do
it. Something that's very characteristic, I think, of the south of Brazil, of men as well. You speak about, because I remember growing up, like around the El Niños, and everybody would be always talking about politics and so confident and so enthusiastic and, putting so much energy onto it. And that's what I really love. And I'm sure that translated universally. I think that not only Gaúchos like it, everybody likes that sense that you put, so much passion, so to speak. I mean, passion is a palavra desgastada, no? But it's true. It's true. You care about it. You wrote about it. You published before.
I love to do it. It's very easy for me to do it because I know all by heart. I read it 5 minutes before I go on air. I just review some dates and names and blah, 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 blah. And I never recorded twice any episode. All the episodes are uncut and straight, which is a kind of one of the charms, because I make mistakes, which is nice. And then I correct myself, because this show is to keep people aware and reading, because I'm a writer, and the books are going down because of the internet, also because of the internet. People spend hours in the Netflix, in the YouTube, in the
Twitter,
social media, and they don't read anymore. And I said, please go read, because I want to make the money in books, not just in internet, because I'm an employer, I'm an employee. So, they pay me to do the show.
I know.
Rich. I'm not rich in the youth. I'm not a rich YouTuber. They are the rich employees.
Yes, indeed. But the part of the reason also because why Brazilians don't know of our generation, I can say for sure, and younger generations even do not know much about our history, is because the suppression of the truth, right? What happened in between 64 and 85, I think that has to do a lot with the military dictatorship, right? That the history books were wiped out. Nobody spoke about it. It's the movement that Brizola started was persecuted. People were afraid to speak or to tell the history between families. In my family, myself, I experienced that, right? Brizola, my grandfather was tortured, My uncles were tortured. My mother died in very strange circumstances. So there is really something happening that we don't speak. Families wouldn't speak because they were afraid. because they
Yes.
were
Or
ashamed.
they are in their side. My family is the opposite of yours. My family support the military coup. They were brainwashed. And when the militaries give their coup, my father, my mother, oh yeah, now it's gonna be nice. And they thought it was nice till 1973, because in 1973 there is the petroleum crisis and the inflation and the miracle, the so-called Brazilian miracle went down. They start to losing money instead of making money, and then 10 years before they would leave, because they took the power in 1964. Most of the middle classes and rich people support them until 1973. Then 1974 and 5 is kind of a swamp. And then 1976, the rich say, no, we must, the rich people, the so-called
the Brazilian elites,
elites, let's gonna get rid of these guys. But it took them 8 years to get rid of them, only in 84. Only in 84. And then when we get rid of them,
but then you can say also that they really never went away, the people who supported the extreme right, the hard right people, supporters. Yes. They were lurking somewhere. It was our naivety to think that they were not around, because how they just came back again with Bolsonaro, it's not just by chance, they have been around. Yeah,
they are not mushrooms that grew up from night to morning. No, they were already there, and the social media give them voice, and then they use their voice to be against democracy again. Before having voted for Fernando Collor, they voted for Collor in 1992, the first Brazilian elected president, the first civilian elected president in 1990. Was Fernando Collor, which was a crook, which was a corrupt, which was impeached, and then he came. Now he's a senator.
So I know this is so crazy. So in any way, one can go on forever in Brazilian politics. Is terrible, but I like that you make also in your Não Vai Cair no ENEM episodes, you are obviously not very fond of any party per se, and then you sort of give it straight as it is. These are the good things this guy did. This is how funny he was. Being also adopted in the school system, right? Your books and I imagine the videos too.
Yeah, they adopted my books in the private schools, never in the public schools, because to be adopted in a public school, you have to be a historian, which I'm not. I'm a journalist. You have to do this and that. You have to follow these rules. I never followed any rules. People from 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, they love my books because they are lively, because they have a pop imagery and journalist text, but they are adopted in private schools till they found out who I was. When they looked at my face and said, we adopted this guy because they hired me to give lectures in their schools. So to be member, it's $1. $1. And you can't imagine how many people send me messages saying that they don't have $1. They just don't. It makes a difference in a whole month income, $1, which breaks my heart, because $1 is $1 anywhere. $1 is nothing. And I could not give them, because it's a YouTube thing, so I could not give them for free. It's not, it didn't depend on me, because if it did depend on me, I would give like 100 certificates of being membership, but I can't. And
but you have a lot of stuff that's already free too, right? On the internet. Most of the stuff is available to everyone.
95% of the channel is free. But people want even more, want just 5%. Said, come on, this 5% you're gonna pay. Sell your kidney. For one guy, I said, sell your kidney.
Don't say they might do it. They might do it, then after you're responsible. But yes, this is great that children, right? Children who sometimes think, oh, history, maybe I don't like history, but they watch you, they say, yes, how do I sign up? I want to be a historian, or I want to be a journalist, or I want to be a writer. I want to learn about Brazil's history now. They are much more engaged, I'm sure.